The morning my brother called, I was standing at my kitchen window watching the first snow of December settle on the Blue Ridge Mountains. Not heavy snow, the quiet kind. The kind that arrives without announcement and covers everything so gradually that you don't notice the world has changed until it already has. My phone buzzed on the counter. I saw his name and I answered. He didn't say hello. Elizabeth. His voice was wrong. Not sick. Not tired. Something else. The specific thinness of a man speaking through a weight he is trying not to let you hear. I need you to come to dinner Saturday. Don't cancel. Don't let anything stop you. Promise me. I told him I promised. He hung up before I could ask why. That phone call stayed with me after everything fell apart. Not the dinner. Not what I found. Not the 4 months of court proceedings that followed. That phone call. The way he said my name like it cost him something. My name is Elizabeth S. Holloway. I am 72 years old. I spent 36 years as a professor of architectural history at the University of Tennessee, teaching students to read buildings, to understand that every structure tells the story of the person who built it, if you know how to look, what materials they chose, what they reinforced, what they left deliberately hidden inside the walls for someone who came after them to find. My brother Thomas was 63 years old. He had built a construction and land development company from nothing, starting with a single parcel of land in East Tennessee he purchased with borrowed money at 29, working weekends and every saved vacation day until the parcel became a subdivision, and the subdivision became a portfolio, and the portfolio became something that bore our family name in 4 states. He was not flashy about it. He drove a 12-year-old truck. He wore the same style of work boots he had worn since we were young. He sent money to our mother's church at Christmas and never told anyone. He was the kind of man who made you feel, simply by being in a room with him, that the things that mattered were going to be protected. He had been married for 11 years to a woman I will call his wife. I will not use her name here. I want to be honest from the beginning. I never trusted her. Not because of anything I could name in the early years. Just the specific instinct that arrives when you watch someone look at the thing your brother built, the way a person looks at something they have already decided belongs to them. Her family ran a property development firm out of Charlotte. Old money. The kind of inherited wealth that makes people confuse possession with entitlement. Her father, a man I will call Franklin, had treated Thomas's company from the first Christmas dinner as something the family had gained access to, rather than something Thomas had built with his own hands over 30 years. He talked about our portfolio at the dinner table. He forwarded business contacts with emails that said, for the family's benefit. Thomas never said anything directly to me, but I knew my brother's jaw, and I watched it tighten every time Franklin spoke. I drove to Asheville on a Saturday in December. 4 hours from Knoxville through mountain roads that had just enough ice to require full attention. I listened to nothing on the drive. I was looking forward to seeing him in the particular way you look forward to someone when life has gotten too busy and you have let too many months pass without sitting in the same room. His wife met me at the door. She smiled the way she always smiled at me, with her mouth only. She said it was wonderful to see me. She took my coat. Her younger brother was already in the living room with a glass of bourbon. He stood and shook my hand with the particular warmth of a man performing warmth for a specific purpose. Her parents were not there that night. I noted it, filed it away without knowing why. Thomas came in from the back of the house a few minutes later, and I felt it the moment I saw him. He was pale. Not sick pale, not tired pale. The specific pallor of a person carrying something they cannot put down. I had seen it once before, on our father's face, in the final weeks before he passed. He held me longer than usual when he hugged me. When he pulled back, his hand stayed on my shoulder for just a moment. He looked at me the way you look at someone when you are memorizing them, when you are saying something with your eyes that you cannot say aloud because the wrong people are in the room. I said, "Thomas, are you all right?" He said, "I'm glad you came." He didn't answer my question. Dinner was careful the way surfaces are careful when something is moving underneath them. His wife had cooked or had someone cook, I was never certain which. The conversation moved through safe channels. a renovation project at her brother's house. Something about a mutual acquaintance. The weather. Thomas ate almost nothing. He pushed food around his plate and kept his eyes mostly down, except for the moments when he looked at me. Every time he looked at me was with that same expression I could not name. Somewhere between the main course and dessert, his wife in the kitchen, her brother outside on a call, Thomas reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. He said very quietly, "I need you to check your phone." I looked at him. He nodded once, barely moving. I slid my phone from my pocket under the table. There was a notification from my bank, an incoming transfer. I opened it and looked at the number. Then I looked at my brother. I could not speak. He squeezed my hand. "Don't say anything. Not here. Not tonight. Keep it. Don't tell anyone. Promise me again." "Thomas, what is happening? What have you done?" "Please, I'll explain everything. Just not here." His wife sat up high on the table and smiled at us both. Thomas let go of my hand and picked up his fork. I put my phone back in my pocket. The number I had seen was not a number I can easily describe. It was the kind of number that changes the shape of a room. The kind that tells you before any words are spoken that the person who sent it had been planning this for a long time, and that they had been afraid for longer than that. He walked me to my car when I left. It was cold and he had no jacket on, and I told him to go inside. He said he wanted a minute. We stood by my car in the December night, and he looked up at the sky. Clear, full of stars, the kind of Appalachian sky that makes you feel both small and permanent simultaneously. And without looking at me, he said, "Do you remember what Daddy used to say about what you build?" I told him I did. Our father used to say, "What you build with your own hands belongs to your own blood." Thomas nodded. "I built every single piece of it, Elizabeth, from nothing. Every decision, every risk, every piece of borrowed money I paid back with interest before anyone asked me to. Don't let them tell you otherwise. Whatever they say after I'm gone, don't let them tell you otherwise." I stood very still. "After you're gone?" He hugged me once more. He went inside. I sat in my car in his driveway for 30 minutes before I could make myself drive. My hands would not stop shaking. He died 9 days later. His wife called me on a Tuesday morning. Her voice was even and composed in the specific way of someone who has rehearsed the words. She said he had been found unresponsive. She said they believed it was cardiac. She said it was very sudden, and she was so sorry. I did not cry on the phone. I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed and stayed very still for a long time. And then I called a woman named Dr. Patricia Reeves. Patricia was not a family lawyer. She was not a close friend. She was a woman I had met 20 years ago at a university reception, an estate and probate attorney who had spent 30 years building a reputation for one specific thing, protecting people from what happens to assets when the wrong people decide the assets belong to them. I had kept her number in my phone without ever expecting to need it. I told her everything, the Sunday call, the dinner, Thomas's face, his hand over mine, the transfer, his words by the car. "After I'm gone." She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Don't touch the money. Don't move it. Don't tell a single person you have it. Come see me tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Thomas's funeral was held the following Saturday, a large service. He had known a great many people, and most of them were genuinely grieving. The particular quality of grief that belongs to people who have lost someone they relied on without fully realizing how much until the moment he was gone. I sat with a group of his oldest friends and said very little. I watched. I watched Franklin move through the reception room, the way a man moves through a property he is assessing, his eyes cataloging, calculating, the specific attention of someone who has arrived at a place they have been planning to arrive at for a long time. I watched Thomas's wife accept a folded document from her father near the back of the room and tuck it into her bag without looking at it. I watched her brother step outside twice to take calls, both times returning with the composed expression of someone who has received information they were waiting for and has processed it successfully. I went home that night and called Patricia. The certified letter arrived the following Monday. It was from an attorney representing Thomas's wife and her family. It stated that Thomas had, prior to his death, signed an amendment to the primary operating agreement of his company. designating Franklin as co-owner with authority to act in the event of the primary owner's absence or incapacity. It stated that as surviving co-owner with spousal consent, the family intended to assume management of all company assets immediately. It requested that I confirm in writing that I had received no transfers from Thomas's accounts in the 90 days prior to his death, that I had no claim on any personal or business property. I read it 3 times. Then I called Patricia and read it to her aloud. She said, "Don't respond, not a single word. Bring it to me now." I drove to her office that afternoon. She read the letter herself, set it on her desk, folded her hands. Then she said, "Elizabeth, I need you to tell me everything you remember about the last several years. Anything Thomas said about the business, any moment that felt wrong but that you explained away." So I told her. I told her about a phone call 2 years earlier when Thomas had mentioned in passing that he was having the company's financial records independently audited because some numbers aren't adding up the way they should. He had said it casually, the way you mention a minor inconvenience. I had not asked more questions. I told her about a Thanksgiving 3 years back. I had been in the kitchen doorway when I overheard Franklin in the hallway on his phone, his voice low and unhurried. "The signature is close enough. Just get it on the other forms as well." I had thought nothing of it at the time. I had filed it away in the particular drawer where you put things you do not want to examine closely, because examining them would require you to take an action you are not yet ready to take. I said it out loud to Patricia for the first time and felt everything in the room shift. She looked at me steadily. Did Thomas have a life insurance policy? I told her yes. A substantial one, taken out years ago. I had been listed as secondary beneficiary, standard for a man in his position, given that the primary was his wife. Patricia turned her computer screen toward me. "This is a filing from 7 months ago. Thomas's policy was amended to remove you as secondary beneficiary and replace you with a trust controlled by his wife's family." She paused. "The signature on this amendment does not match Thomas's signature on file." I sat very still. "Are you telling me what I think you're telling me?" "I'm telling you," Patricia said, "that we need a forensic documents examiner. I'm telling you we need to move carefully and quickly. And I'm telling you that you are not to meet with these people without me present under any circumstances." Thomas's wife called me 2 days later. Her voice was smooth and warm and practiced, the specific warmth of a recording. She said she wanted a conversation, just the 2 of us. She said her family didn't want conflict. She said she knew how hard this was for both of us. She just wanted to clear the air. I told her I would think about it and call her back. I called Patricia. Patricia said, "If you meet with her, I'm there. We choose the location. We bring no original documents. We give them nothing they can use." We met in Patricia's conference room. Thomas's wife arrived with her brother and their family's attorney, a man in an expensive suit who shook hands like it was a performance. They sat across from me and Patricia and arranged their faces into expressions of reasonable concern. Her brother did most of the talking. He said Thomas had expressed in the weeks before his death a desire to restructure the company's ownership to ensure continuity. He said the documents reflected Thomas's intentions. He said they were not there to make demands, only to ensure clarity. Patricia said, "We'd be happy to review any documentation you have. Copies only, please. We'll conduct our own review." Their attorney slid copies across the table. Patricia looked at them without touching them. "We'll be in touch," she said. In the hallway after they left, Patricia turned to me and said simply, "The signature on the insurance amendment and the signature on the operating agreement addendum are from the same hand, and it is not Thomas's hand. I am confident of that." She filed that afternoon, the insurance commissioner's office, the state attorney general. She engaged the forensic documents examiner she had already contacted 2 days earlier in anticipation of this exact moment. She was 2 steps ahead of them before they had finished shaking hands in that conference room. I will be grateful for that for the rest of my life. What happened over the following 5 months is a matter of court record. The forensic examination confirmed that both documents bore forged signatures, produced by the same hand, with the same instrument, in the same period. Investigators discovered that her brother had been investigated, though not charged, for a similar scheme involving a business partner in another state 8 years earlier. Text messages recovered from Thomas's wife's phone showed a conversation with Franklin from 14 months before Thomas died. She had asked her father how long it would take to have Thomas removed from his own operating agreement. Franklin had replied with a timeline and the name of their attorney. An exchange between Franklin and that attorney discussed the insurance policy amendment in language that left their intentions without ambiguity. And then there was the envelope. Patricia received it 3 months into the investigation, sent from Thomas's personal attorney, with instructions to mail it 60 days after Thomas's death. Inside was a letter in Thomas's handwriting and a small USB drive. The letter said he had suspected for more than a year that Franklin's family was manipulating documents connected to the company. He said he had begun gathering evidence quietly, careful not to act before he had enough, because he understood that if he moved too early, they would simply find a different way. He said he had transferred his personal assets to accounts they had no access to. He said he was being careful. That was how our father used to describe fear when we were children. Being careful. The USB drive contained photographs of documents he had removed from his own files, copies of emails, internal memos, signature comparisons, the kind of evidence that a man assembles when he understands he may not be there to deliver it himself and needs to make certain it arrives anyway. It was meticulous. It was thorough. It was exactly how Thomas did everything. I sat in Patricia's office and read his letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my bag. And I sat in that chair for a long time without speaking. Patricia gave me the time. I thought about the Sunday phone call, the way his voice had sounded through the wall. I thought about his face at dinner. That specific pallor, the untouched plate, the hand over mine under the table. I thought about the way he had looked at me across the room all evening, the way you look at someone when you are committing them to memory because you understand, at some level, that the time for ordinary looking is running out. He knew, not the exact shape of what was coming, but the direction of it, the weight of it, the way a man who has been paying close attention for a long time eventually begins to see the outline of a thing before it fully arrives. He had spent his last year afraid. He had spent it being careful. He had built a paper trail, transferred what he could protect, placed a letter with a lawyer with instructions for its delivery, and then he had called his sister on a Sunday morning and asked her to come to dinner and made her promise she would come. He had put everything in her hands before anyone else knew she had it. Franklin pleaded guilty. Her brother was convicted at trial on 2 counts of document forgery and 1 count of fraud in connection with an insurance policy. Thomas's wife reached a settlement that resulted in her forfeiting any claim to Thomas's company, his personal assets, and the insurance proceeds. The policy paid out correctly, to me, as the original and rightful secondary beneficiary under the terms of the original, unfalsified document. I did not feel victorious when it was over. That is the honest answer, and I want to say it plainly, because the honest answer matters here. What I felt was the specific exhaustion of a long thing finally ending. And underneath the exhaustion, something that I do not think will fully resolve itself for a long time. The grief of knowing that my brother spent his last year carrying this alone. Afraid, trying to protect what he had built with his own hands while performing normalcy for the people who were taking it from him. Watching his jaw tighten at dinner tables, making careful phone calls, pulling documents from his own files and photographing them in secret. He was the kind of man who made you feel, simply by being in a room with him, that everything important was going to be protected. He protected everything important, including me, including himself. He just couldn't protect his life. Thomas's company is still operating. I hired a new management team from among the people who had worked with him the longest, the ones who knew his standards and had built their own careers inside them. I kept his name on the building. I kept the framed photograph of the first parcel he ever purchased. A muddy rectangle of East Tennessee earth with a hand-painted for sale sign on the wall of what is now my office. I kept his work boots in the corner. I have not moved them. I am not going to. There's something I want to say about buildings, about what 36 years of teaching architectural history gave me that became, in the most unexpected way, the most useful thing I carried through everything that followed. Buildings tell the story of the person who built them, if you know how to look. Not just in the grand gestures, the facade, the height, the materials visible from the street. In the details, the things a builder chooses to reinforce beyond what the code requires. The things they hide inside the walls because they understand that structures are tested by what they cannot predict, and that the hidden work is what determines whether something survives. Thomas knew this. He was a builder. He did not just build properties. He built the legal and financial infrastructure around those properties with the same meticulous care. He documented everything. He kept copies of things his wife's family never knew he had copied. He placed a letter with his attorney with instructions precise enough that it arrived in Patricia's hands at the exact moment it needed to arrive. Then, he built protection into the walls of everything. Hidden, deliberate, precisely where it needed to be. He knew there would come a day when someone who loved him would need to find it. He made sure it was there to be found. I go to his office sometimes in the early mornings before the staff arrives, when the building is quiet and the light comes through the east-facing windows, the way it came through our childhood bedroom windows on winter mornings. I sit in his chair. I look at the boots in the corner. I look at the photograph of the muddy parcel. I think about a man standing in a cold driveway in December without a jacket, looking up at a sky full of stars, telling his sister not to let anyone take what he had built. I think about the phone call on a Sunday morning, the way he said my name, like it cost him something, like it was the most important thing he would say that day. And I think about what our father used to say, what you build with your own hands belongs to your own blood. Thomas built everything himself, every single piece of it. And at the end, when he understood what was coming, when he was being careful, which was how our father described fear, he did one final thing with his own hands. He made sure it came to me. If this story gave you something, a recognition, a language for something you have been carrying or watching happen, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Tell me about the people who built things carefully. Tell me about what was hidden in the walls. Because some people leave their whole lives as evidence of who they were. And the least we can do is make sure the evidence is heard.